Hello and welcome to Changing Hypervisors with Veeam Demos and Expert Help. So today's webinar is sponsored by Veeam and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm with Actual Tech and I'm excited to be your moderator for this action-packed webinar. Now, before we get to today's great content, we have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to two blogs from Veeam on VMware alternatives and on migrating from VMware to Hyper-V. There's also a link to a customer migration session from the VeeamON conference, which is enticingly titled Beards and Bourbon. So you're definitely going to want to check that out, but don't start that video right now on YouTube. You'll miss a lot of good stuff happening here. So just click into it, leave it in a tab and come back to it later. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Now, finally, one of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert presenters, who I'm going to introduce in a second. And to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize for you. That's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. So after the event is over, we'll look at all the questions that came in, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. All right, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic panel. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our expert presenters today. From Veeam, we have the Rick Vanover, Vice President of Product Strategy for Veeam Software. Our other members of this all-star panel are Benjamin Clements, President of Strategic Online Systems, and Howard Lowe, President of Sales and Marketing at DataON. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys to take it away and get us started.
Well, thank you, Scott, and a big welcome to everyone. I can see some really cool locations chiming in on the Q&A panel. I'm joining from Central Ohio, Benjamin's from Western Tennessee, and Howard from Southern Cal. And we are going to rock a really important topic here today that really hits on a major market move. And I'm in my 14th year here at Veeam, and it's kind of odd. I get a lot of questions now of organizations wanting to move their data center investment to a new platform. Veeam's had capabilities in the market since 2016 to do that, but to have that conversation today, I needed to phone some friends. And so I've got two people that I want to introduce you to that have direct experience in this migration. And I'll start with you, Benjamin. Can you give us a quick introduction about yourself and some of the services that SOS provides?
Sure. Benjamin Clements, president of SOS. We've been an MSP for longer than most people even knew the term MSP. Probably I didn't know myself. So been in this business almost 30 years, helping out customers manage their endpoints, but also managing their data centers, working with disaster recovery and all that. So this is near and dear to our heart. We're so glad this webinar is happening today. I think it's very needed.
Awesome. And then for being 30 years in the business, you sure look good, and you look like your profile picture, which is always a good sign. And speaking of another person who looks like their profile picture, Howard Lowe, do you want to introduce your role and the stack you have at DataON?
Thanks, Rick. Ben, you do look very young. My name is Howard Lowe. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at DataON. Really happy to be here today, and thanks, Veeam, for sponsoring this webinar. Love to share you guys with all the audience today, all the experience we have helping mid-level enterprises move them from one technology to another using Microsoft Azure Stack Site Hypercloud and working with Veeam as partners to make sure that happens smoothly. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Again, we've had this story a couple of different times in a couple of different places, but it is very, very relevant today. And Veeam, we have sponsored this webinar about changing hypervisor investments. And truly, to the audience, get your questions in here. We'll either answer them via text. We have dedicated time at the end. But the thought here is, people come to Veeam for backup, but current conditions are making people come to Veeam as a migration tool. Data freedom, the kind of bottom right of this 5-point circle here, is really coming in handy today. To tell the history when it comes to Veeam, we've had image-based recovery to go to a different platform since 2016. I remember I went to Microsoft Partner Conference and said, hey, we can restore to Azure, and that was a big deal. That was kind of cool, taking the image-based backup from here, putting it there. We added other clouds, we added other hypervisors, we incorporated our agent for physical workloads. And today we have this very good full mesh of data freedom to move workloads from one platform to another and almost anywhere to anywhere. And it's really fitting today when we think about, current conditions with hypervisor platforms. There's a lot of organizations that have been given untenable cost increases, and they've really had to reassess. And I see a couple of different camps. I see people wanting wholesale evacuation, rebalancing, and I even see some people staying the course. But whenever we talk about wholesale evacuation or rebalancing when multiple hypervisors are in play, that's when I think we need some of the different expertise in the market. And, this whole motion got really popular here with Veeam right around VeeamON. And that's when I first met Benjamin. And, it's always tricky when you do like a demo at a big event, because they're like, okay, you have 3 minutes and 22 seconds to do something. Okay. And it's not really enough time to tell a full story, but we're going to give you that full story today. But when we talk about migrating things around, Benjamin, you have a really good story about things that are in your control and things that are out of your control. You want to kind of walk through that and how your practice is built around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole concept of data freedom, we like to think in terms of VM mobility, because just to make it very realistic of, they're your VMs, whether those VMs are, your workloads, your containers, et cetera. They're your VMs, so you should run those where it makes sense for you. To us, that's an important part of data freedom. And so we like to break things out and say, okay, here are certain disaster recovery scenarios that are outside of your control in terms of both the timing and they're more reactive. And then what we like to do is, whenever we can, let's target this VM mobility where we control when it's going to happen. So we look at, planned failovers before an event happens, or migration. We've always looked at migration as a planned disaster recovery, where we control everything that happens before then. We put all the work in planning before the migration so that we save time after the fact.
Now, some of these in control and out of control scenarios, I don't know if we have this later, but I want to highlight that you think about, fire, flood, and blood, and some of the things that you truly can't control. I would also put, and this was something you said, that, cost overruns, and that's out of my control. And I can't, it becomes a disaster sometimes when you
Right.
think about a 400% cost increase for a platform or something like that. And when you equate things like that to fire, flood, and blood, or, those types of disasters, it ends up becoming a familiar discipline. But again, friends, Benjamin and his colleagues do this all the time, and their services are powered by Veeam, which actually I need to ask Benjamin another time if there's any suggestions to make the implementation better. That's a different conversation. But I think it's really important to just think about the ability to migrate. You have that control of your data. Veeam's a very flexible product. And when we think about these conditions and how to move through, I am really bad about, just click, 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 do this. And that's a good, easy story. But the reality, Benjamin, is a lot of considerations, a lot of discovery, a lot of preparation, a lot of ahas, a lot of gotchas. And I think you've seen about all of those.
Yeah. And actually, can I bring up one more thing? Can we go back to the previous slide? Sorry, calling audible here. But one other thing about dividing up these two, of course, you have Veeam in the center because it's the toolkit to do all of this. But also what happens for the VM mobility on the right is part of that migration is we're introducing a new risk, or actually introducing a new mitigation risk of the platform itself. So right now, one of the risks that is happening to a lot of our viewers right now is this, the budget is now your risk that you're having to overcome. It's almost like an analogy of you're driving the Chevy and you're leasing the Chevy and you love the Chevy, and all of a sudden they come back to you and say it's going to be 4 times as expensive next year. And you're like, oh, that's a risk I can't handle. I've got to start looking at alternatives. And because Veeam gives us the ability to do this VM mobility, then we can actually look at addressing this risk, even budgetary risk of the actual platform. And of course, that gets into a whole nother layer besides the VM. Maybe conversations that we weren't having, several years ago, that we can now address. And so talking about the risks of the platform, either budget, support, stability, expandability, feature sets, as this whole hybrid cloud environment becomes increasingly important. Maybe you need to go to another platform. Veeam makes that possible through their tool sets that we can use for migration.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And Howard, I think I want to throw it over to you, because whenever I talk to someone about changing anything, their first question is, okay, it sounds great, but if it isn't, what about backup and recovery? And I think, you've helped people, Howard, kind of move over to new platforms. Do those concerns kind of resonate with you?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that, my job in life is talk to customers and engage with customers. Hence, I'm on the road more than 50% of the time with customers. What customer want is a peace of mind. A peace of mind that, one, you have the right technology and you have the right partners that will be with you to help you mitigate these risks. I think it's important to know with Veeam, you're not only having a backup solution that's robust, but you have a tool that allows you to have the freedom of move your current technology of VM from one hypervisor to another seamlessly with minimal downtime. I think that's very important. I think many people out there, and I'll say it, a lot of VMware customer out there I talk to every day that says, wow, if I move from VMware to Azure Stack ACI, Microsoft Hyper-V, what challenge do I face? The reality is, to us, technology is technology. As long as you have the right tool set, right people, it really take down all the challenges you face, mitigate the risk, but give you the peace of mind that you can still run your business with the right technology without any downtime. I think that's very important to note as I talk to all the customer every day about this challenge they face moving hypervisors.
Well, Benjamin, let's talk about downtime, because there's a lot of Veeam capabilities to help move stuff from A to B, and in fact, I'd say there's different ways to do it based on different. We could do it with the agent, we could do it with image base, we could do it with the VM powered off with the image based backup. There's a lot of ways to do it, but when you kind of do this broad assessment, it's good because we can plan around the time of the conversion, and then there's the testing kind of above that. But what's the tolerance of downtime when it comes to, and this is a trick question, but what's the tolerance of downtime when it comes to going to a new platform? And I'm hoping you say the one thing I think you're going to say.
Well, so our goal is to get that downtime in a small enough window that, somebody can take this downtime and say, okay, maybe at the end of a business day from 5:30 to 6 or 5:30 to 5:45, we can take a little bit of downtime and we can take a little bit of slowness. What what we want to do is minimize that downtime using Veeam's orchestration and reporting tools. Is that kind of what you're getting at right there?
Well, my thought was, I know that you do a lot of pre-conversion testing, and that's
correct.
Because a lot of people think that I need 2 hours to convert and test, but the reality is you can stage up a lot of that. You can test ahead of time, and then you can repeat the test, and that's where I think it's super important to be granular, be specific with this technology, because you start saying, okay, I need an hour, I need some amount of time to do this conversion.
Right.
But I also need to know that it works. And having the data lab is what I call it. I think that's a great vehicle to make sure that things are going to go the way people want.
Yeah. So that's what we always talk about is we need to do test migrations for each OS because, and we know that most of you are going to be ashamed to admit this, but there's probably a lot of you that still have like a 2012 server that's an R2 out there. And those migrations, actually, that OS acts very differently than a 2016 or even the 32-bit version of 2012. And because of the power of Veeam, we can actually test the migration of this OS, of each OS, without actually having downtime. So what we do is we work with our customer to put those into a sandbox, or what we like to call the bubble, if you've been a customer of ours, that basically we take the actual VM and turn it from, like, let's say VMware, and we turn it into an Azure Stack HCI VM, but just don't put on the production network. And we can actually see how it handles the migration. What parts do we need to adjust? What, the integration services for an older Windows OS is different on the install than a newer one, et cetera. So we can actually go through that, see how the NIC responds, because, think about how different this is. When you run the Veeam tool, the magic disguises how complex it is. Literally going from a VM that's in VMware on a SAN all the way to a VM that's on Azure Stack HCI that's on their software-defined storage. And Veeam makes it so easy that you go, oh, wow, this is a huge migration that just happened. So therefore, you do have to test each one. And because of Veeam tools, we can do that with, at that point, no downtime to production. And we can actually identify what data are we going to have problems with, what, virtual hardware are we going to have problems with, what do we need to do right after it boots up, how many times do we have to reboot that VM, because you don't want to be doing this when there's actually downtime. You want to test this out. So it gives us the ability to do all of that beforehand. And so you can spend that time and say, hey, we are now ready to go and we know exactly what we need to do for these types of OSs going forward.
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of things. There's going to be Windows reactivate might come up, those types of things. You might also see some fiddlesome enterprise apps not start correctly. It's actually probably a great discovery for broader disaster recovery because it really is changing everything. And the one kind of twist I'll also add is the bubble is also a good opportunity to see on Azure Stack HCI, what does a full backup look like? What does an incremental backup look like? Is it quick? Is it performant? Is it chances are, just by the way the two different platforms, especially when it comes to snapshots versus checkpoints, you actually may see it perform quite well. I'm a big time Azure Stack HCI fan, former Microsoft MVP, so I'm really loving this angle. And I look through these different bullet points here. Different OSs will perform different. I think, you can get into certain very granular approaches to things like domain controllers. Like that might be one that is best as a powered off VM and, do that as at the last moment because you don't want any chance of data sync there, out of sync, I should say. But I love this angle. And again, friends, Benjamin and his colleagues have built a whole practice around it. Any comments on your side on any of this, Howard?
Yeah, I think Benjamin hits it right. These are items and criteria that customer desire to have, right? They're running production. Many of our customers are running production workload. And their goal is, if they make these kind of technology transition, they need to, one, keep their data safe. Second, they want to make sure that any downtime is kept to a minimum. And more importantly, is really mitigating risk, right? I think Benjamin hits it very well, but I think, give kudos to Veeam. Not only do you guys have ability to migrate, you have a DR strategy too, right? Ability to have a data transfer to another site, which many of our customers have done, and have ability to do replication of DR. So the ability to have a software that not only help with backup, migration, and also DR really gives a peace of mind to our customer base to choose you guys. And when we talk to customer, ability to show all the experiences we have from small to large customer and be very direct about what we can do to help them minimize risk has been a very, very strategic thing for us, for our customer.
Strategic. Pardon the pun. I love it. All right. So let's also talk about some of the migration options. I love this kind of view that you have here, Benjamin, but maybe walk us through kind of how you approach individual migrations.
Sure. So, there's a lot going on that I think about specific examples. And, when we first started using they called it instant VM recovery at the time. Now it's called instant recovery. It was back when I think it was 9.5, and we could take an agent level backup from Veeam. So you could take this agent level, you could stick it on a VM, you could stick on a physical, you make this backup, and all of a sudden you can just do this magical restore on the fly to Hyper-V. So not only could you boot up that VM while you're doing that restore, it's also converted into Hyper-V using whatever storage you're using on Hyper-V. So this magic of being able to start up the server while you restore is very unusual from a traditional restore. Think about what a traditional restore is. A traditional restore, you're usually taking a backup and you're sending your virtual hard drives over to somewhere, and you're just sticking there, and you have to wait until that finishes, and then you can turn on that virtual machine. Well, with instant recovery, you don't have to wait. You can start up that server while it's restoring. Now, of course, right at the beginning, it's going to be slow as it's copying all the data over to your fast storage. But if you're talking about, you can identify a period of time where your VM doesn't have to be terribly performant in the first 10 minutes, then you can literally see 15-minute downtime for a 5 terabyte VM. And we've done that quite a bit. It's just magic. So of course we love the instant recovery. And then the second part about that is the small downtime window, because it's not just restoring while you start it up, it's also converting it from now 8 different platforms. Veeam allows you to convert from 8 different virtual platforms to Azure Stack HCI or Hyper-V on the fly. So not only is it starting up while restoring, it's converting it to a different platform. And so, of course, a traditional restore, that's going to get it tremendous problems. You can't do that. And because of this ability, you can then test success on near real-time data. And what I mean by that is, we all know that when we're trying to back up certain types of data, some of that data is problematic. Maybe it's an old database that doesn't use the typical SQL or something. It locks certain files open. We can actually do a backup using Veeam and then turn right around and instantly do an instant recovery of a copy of that machine in the bubble or in the sandbox. And we can see, did that last backup of data make it? Did it cause any problems? Did it lock open that file? And finally, this point number 4, most people don't think about this, but if you're trying to minimize downtime, every reboot of that production VM counts. So if I can do something where I say I'm going to do an instant recovery at the end of, let's say it's a business day, it's a 5 terabyte server, I say I'm going to take it down at 5:30. I'm going to have it back up using instant recovery at 5:45. Well, it's going to start off slow because it's running from the backup, but the faster The longer it goes, the faster it'll get because it's copying the data into the new Azure Stack HCI platform. Until you come in the morning, it's totally migrated. We don't have to reboot that VM again. And think how important that is, because the end of a day is when sometimes most of our VMs have less usage and have less requirements for performance-wise. But the beginning of the day, it resets. All of a sudden, we need full performance. Well, that's when the whole thing is totally migrated. So we don't have to reboot it twice. That's a big, big key factor that it's hard to find anywhere. And Veeam gives that to us and has been giving that to us literally since, at least we've been using it since 2019. And so, of course, we're in love with instant recovery. We don't know how we would live without that for migration purposes.
Well, that's so one couple of comments. I had to start writing notes here. First of all, Benjamin, we did change the name from Instant VM Recovery to Instant Recovery because we added it to file shares. We added it to databases, right? And that leads me to, I'll tell everyone here in my home lab, granted, not everyone's running a 2-host cluster in their home, but I am, and I'm protecting it and migrating it with Veeam. But I had some technical debt, and you'll appreciate this, Benjamin. My personal file server was on 2008 R2, and it's not a good idea to be doing that nowadays. So what I actually did was instant recover the whole thing, but then I just took the now VHDX and stuck that onto a new OS drive, right? So you can even get into some Humpty Dumpty, lack of a better word, in the bubble where you can use instant recovery for components and move them around. And like you said, you've been using this since 2019. One thing I want to highlight, this was not built as a exit strategy for a platform per se. This technology was built as a flexibility angle out of necessity. Let's go to maybe even today. There are scenarios where a physical server has failed and you need to get a part, and it might be a day. Now that might sound okay, but it might not sound okay if you're talking to your app team. Well, let's convert it from a physical server to a virtual platform because I've got capacity to do that. Well, today's the day that system becomes a VM. Or another scenario is, oh no, the whole environment is taped off with effectively police tape because of a ransomware scenario. We can't get access to the infrastructure. We have the backups, but we cannot restore there because maybe there's insurance discovery, root cause analysis, cybersecurity, law enforcement type situations. Then this technology becomes very helpful because today's the day we're going to move to this platform, whether it's a service provider, the cloud, or our other site, those types of things. So there's a lot of flexibility that comes into this. And, the trick on the drive I actually got from Veeam support because they've done that with databases. They've had organizations want to consolidate database servers, especially if there's not a DBA in the mix. They would use the Veeam Explorer to take it from one database server but restore it to another. So again, this portability story, whether we're image-based, individual drives, of course, files, no problem. Databases, we have so many ways to move that data. Have you ever done that trick, Benjamin, by the way, just the drive handoff situation?
Not the instant drive handoff. That's a great idea. I mean, because if you need to get off of an old OS that has no more patches to instantly get that drive available, that's a great idea. I have to write that one down.
Yeah, call it Humpty Dumpty. That's what I call it. But basically, but you got to know that everything is on that data drive, and that is what we need. You could even, here, let me give you another one here, Benjamin. You could do Humpty Dumpty in the dirty way. If it's a C drive, but all you need is the data, you could still Humpty Dumpty it, but then after the bubble, delete the Windows directory, and then it's just a data drive. Okay, so you can get some hack. Yeah, this is hack 101.
Nice.
Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's gonna tear me up and like, oh man, I tried that, it did not end well, type of thing. So, but Humpty Dumpty on data drives works for me. So, anyways, tell us a little bit more. You got some good customer angles here of who you've worked with Benjamin. Like you said, 30 years. I think, just the experience in this, you and your team are doing this every day for people, it seems.
Right. Yeah. So you see across different verticals, a nonprofit that Youth Village is very near and dear to my heart. We've been working with them for almost 30 years. They help out children who have no other help, and they're across the nation. And then City of Corpus Christi and Briarcrest Christian School. So going across nonprofit and SLED. And so that's just an example of some of the great customers that we work with. And so, we may not be able to reach kids, or we may not be able to help in different ways, but we can sure help with technology and help those people who know how to help kids and know how to, help people. So that's what we get excited about. And so we get to work with a lot of great people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I'd say any industry can be cost conscious. And, you think about the tolerance of a price going up on a platform, that makes a difference. I mean, I've had that conversation about Veeam with people over the years, some longtime customers who bought us early on, and, they've upgraded and scaled and things like that. And there's a much more capable platform now, so the costs do go up, but not like that, not in some of these other models.
Right.
So good stuff. Really appreciate your partnership and what you're doing. But I think a big part of when you move to a new platform is, what does that platform look like? And one of the, the great targets that you're doing, Benjamin, is going into DataON, one of the kind of the household names in Azure Stack HCI. If any of you are new to this world and this platform, you cannot go far without hearing about DataON. And so, Howard, I'd like you to walk us through kind of the picture of the platform of Azure Stack HCI.
Absolutely. Thank you. You were talking about data integrity. I think business integrity is the main reason why we work with a strategic online system all the time, Benjamin. And majority of our customer actually knows Benjamin because I bring him to all my customers. I feel very comfortable. I think it's important to know, as a company, we pride ourselves on helping customer and be there when they need all their helps. We are a company based in Southern California, and we've been doing business in the technology sector for over 35 years. It means we've seen the up and downs, the good and bad, and the fact that we're here is because we care about our customer and continue to help them. DataON made a decision about 12 years ago when Microsoft came out with their first software-defined storage solution called Storage Spaces in 2012 R2, and we decided that we would go all in, exclusively Microsoft. And since then, we've been a Microsoft partner and continue to service all the enterprise customer. As Microsoft continue to evolve with the customer requirement needs, they now offer a great solution called Azure Stack HCI, and it's a hybrid cloud solution that the data and solution sits in your own data center, but it's hybrid cloud. Why? Because it integrates with Azure Cloud seamlessly, so you could take advantage of all the Azure services. And what we do at DataON is we go and take our platform and solution and do all the validation, certification to make sure that the solution and platform we deliver and architect for you as enterprises meet all the requirements of Microsoft. And if you go to the Microsoft catalog, which you can see easily, you'll see DataON has the most validated solution in the catalog. And clearly in that process, DataON continue to innovate to help our customer with management and make sure they can monitor all the solution with our software that integrates seamlessly into Azure Monitor to make sure you have that single pane of glass to manage your infrastructure. Remember, this infrastructure is top to bottom. And lastly, to help our customer, we work with the best of breed out there, including Intel, NVIDIA, to deliver the best compute and graphics solution.
All right, I'll hit the next slide here. But when we talk about that journey, Howard, I think, like I said, I've played a lot with Azure Stack HCI. I've had it in the lab for almost 10 years here at Veeam and dibble-dabbled ahead of time. But not everybody's, Azure Arc and S2D friendly. Kind of walk us through what these stacks look like.
Sure. I think it's one thing to know that the technology we're talking about is actually the same technology that powers Azure today. So it's been proven. Microsoft uses its own technology to power the entire cloud. When we speak to customer, we always talk about this journey of hybrid cloud journey. You have two pendulums. Do I go all cloud? Do I keep on staying on premise? It's a decision that all the IT decision maker need to make. But you don't really have to make one or the other 100% because you have choices. The choice is you can have the best of two worlds. And we believe that best of two worlds is a hybrid cloud from Microsoft. And when we talk to customers, we always want to figure out in which part of the journey they're at. Many customers today are still at their legacy 3-tier traditional SAN with SAN storage fiber channel switches and nodes running VMware infrastructure. Nothing wrong with that. Great solution. However, you have a choice, right? Especially with all the challenges that you're facing with pricing increase from other hypervisors like VMware, you have a choice with other out there that is as robust and reliable as any enterprise solution. Microsoft continued the journey to say, hey, we'd like you to move outside the traditional SAN 3-tier architecture to a hyper-converged infrastructure where you have less dependent on single point of failure. You have the ability to scale your compute storage and networking seamlessly by adding additional resources. That's a hyper-converged infrastructure. However, Microsoft took it one level up. They said, in addition to having a hyper-converged infrastructure, we now get to give you the ability to integrate this on-premises infrastructure into our Azure cloud and take advantage of all the Azure services. Those Azure services include VDI for Azure Virtual Desktop that runs on premises, AKS from container that runs on premises, managed SQL services ability to run on premises. But this foundation is built on the fact that you have an infrastructure that could do storage, do compression, virtualization with Hyper-V, software-defined networking with all the networking capability. All that together is what this integrated system from Microsoft Azure Stack ACI allows you to do. And you should have a peace of mind that today, if you have a VMware infrastructure, you absolutely have a technology from Microsoft that you can migrate to using Veeam and to make sure that everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, one comment I'll say to that, Howard, is that that hybrid play, it's hard to make a recommendation for everyone, but especially as we're live today on 30th of July, there's some service interruptions, right? So it's really good to have. Yeah, it's really good to have a hybrid part of your infrastructure to run things and such, even though I did a test with like Veeam Data Cloud, and that's working okay. So not everything's impacted, but there are some things that are impacted. And I think that this journey, I think one thing that's really important is not, and it's harder to do when you change platforms, say from VMware to Azure Stack HCI. But I, Howard, have spoken to a lot of people that are going from old VMware cluster to new VMware cluster. And I'm like, friends, whatever you do, do not propagate bad design decisions of the past on your new journey. Use this as an opportunity to clean up networking, reassess storage, bizarre configurations. In fact, Benjamin and I were talking about in-guest iSCSI or things like that, which isn't part of an image-based backup. The agent can help you there. Or VMware RDMs, and just stuff like that. It's kind of like smoking. It's not a good time to start doing that. So let's make some good design decisions going forward. And a good comment came in from Tom, who said, quote, "We migrated a server, used Veeam Instant Recovery to do this in a simple way, was able to do it quickly." I summarized your comment, Tom, but thank you for sharing. But Howard, some of the different hybrid stories, what kind of use cases do they bring to you?
Right, absolutely. I think as I alluded to earlier, every technology you really got to get yourself acquainted, right? And having partners like Veeam and having experts like Benjamin in place to help you with that journey is very important. I think as you guys continue to have a discussion with your partners, and if you want to reach out to DataON, happy to have that conversation, is really understand the difference between what you have today, whether or not it's a 3-tier infrastructure SAN, and what are the benefit you get with a hyper-converged infrastructure, and does it really fit your enterprise and in your architecture? That's the first discussion. And we believe that there's a lot of benefit that delivers by a 3-tier versus an HCI. Number 2 is don't be afraid for the fact that just because you have VMware, there isn't other alternatives. There's absolutely a lot of alternatives out there for virtualization platform, right? And clearly, Microsoft is one of the choices you could choose. And regardless of the misnomer for Hyper-V, it's absolutely an enterprise resilient hypervisor that's used across all Fortune 500. All of them use Hyper-V. And Microsoft uses Hyper-V in Xbox, their data center, all their servers is all running Hyper-Vs. So absolutely a technology that we believe that is enterprise and all our customers, thousands of people using on it. As we continue this conversation, as you have transition, really talk about business recovery and business continuity, and Veeam clearly is smack in the middle in that discussion picture. How do you take a tool like Veeam to really help you make that transition more seamless and more smooth and with a peace of mind? I think having that conversation is very important. And I'm talking to experts like Veeam and Benjamin, really help our customer to feel comfortable making that choice, because you have choices to make sure that you have air gapping for all the ransomware. You have the ability to do backup and DR. All that are capability that you should have a conversation with. The last piece is really ability to take advantage of a lot of workload that today might be somewhere else. You have the ability to integrate this workload into a hybrid cloud infrastructure, like a AI workload, like a VDI workload, like a container workload. Ability to have a on-premise infrastructure that can run this workload at your time and at your infrastructure is very important. And I think Microsoft delivers that for you.
Yeah, one comment I'll say here is that the big question is, if you go to a new platform, how can I know that I'm not introducing new risk just by that? And, when it comes to Veeam's Windows integration and Microsoft integration, it's very long and deep. True story, find me sometime. It even goes before Veeam existed as a company. True story. But one thing I'll highlight is that the Hyper-V integration first came in 2011. And I don't want to, I can't really, but I will say here, I just got off a call with our product management team. And I'll just say, there are some prioritized topic of capabilities for Hyper-V coming up from this, as are other hypervisors. We've announced the Proxmox hypervisor. We recently had the Oracle Linux KVM platform, et cetera. So we're embracing this data freedom on the product team as well, including the ones we already have, like Hyper-V and Azure Stack HCI. So more to come. Watch the space for sure. But Howard, I think that, it's also important to do a mind map of the Azure Arc kind of management layer. And not everybody needs all of these. Like, not everybody's ready for AKS. Not everybody is using some of the different data services or machine learning, for example, on the top. But I think there's a core platform that's ready for anything. Walk people from the blinking light up to Azure.
Yeah, I think this is a really good depiction of what a hybrid cloud infrastructure looks like. I think if you look at holistically from the bottom, first you need to have a partner that delivers the infrastructure for you that's certified. And DataON is one of many Microsoft partners, just so you know. DataON is not the only partner. The traditional OEM, the Dell, the HP, the Lenovo, these are all huge partners of Microsoft that delivered this hybrid cloud solution for you. So definitely to do your research in that process. Once you found a partner, you have ability now to pick the OS, which is Azure Stack HCI. It's a bare metal OS that sits on the server that delivers virtualization with Azure Virtualization Hyper-V. It does storage capability with software-defined storage with storage basis direct. Did the studio, compression, thin provisioning, all the requirements you want, all flash, NVMe, it's all there. Yeah, software networking. Once you have the infrastructure built, now you can decide whether or not you want to run Windows VM, Linux VM, virtual desktop as your workload on top of your infrastructure. Or you could pick container services. So you have that flexibility with Microsoft to really choose what's the right workload for you. Clearly, once all that is built, now you can really take advantage of all the hybrid capability that's already in Azure. These wasn't built for Azure Stack ACI. These are services that's in Azure today, right? But Microsoft says you have the ability to run these services on premises on your Azure Stack ACI. You could do monitoring. You could do insights. You could push down all the security policies seamlessly all the way down to all your component server. You have the ability to monitor and manage everything in a single pane of glass that looks exactly like Azure. That's Azure Arc. So you can see holistically, this is a complete solution, complete platform offered by Microsoft. And with partners like Veeam, with expert like Benjamin from SOS, we had the ability to help you architect a solution properly. And if you move from a traditional SAN to VMware, you have a peace of mind that you have all your workload will be sitting on infrastructure that's robust and proven.
No, I think that's really relevant for today, Howard. And then, kind of one other point I want to hit is the actual platform. I mean, you and I have a network, and Benjamin as well, of kind of real common people. I know people by first name that you know by first name. And again, this stack is consistent with them. Tell us about the individual platform that is really that heart of an Azure Stack HCI deployment.
Absolutely. First of all, it's not rocket science. You guys seen these standalone rack mount server, right? A lot of OEM has a DataON also deliver these platform solution. And what we do is we actually certify solution from an Intel white box and have a DataON bread on it, right? With these solution, you could deliver all the hybrid cloud. You have your NVMe storage inside of it. You have your 100 gig, 200 gig networking that you deliver into the data center or at the edge. The ability to manage, operate everything as a modernized subscription model. So really, to me, at the end of the day, these are traditional commoditized server, but now is purpose built for a hybrid cloud Azure Stack ACI. And working with partners such as SOS and DataON, we could deliver that solution for you seamlessly to make sure that transition really happen and make sure you have a peace of mind. And I'm definitely open for Q&A and whenever we have that opportunity.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, and we do have a couple of questions here that have come in. Great conversation so far. The first question here, and I'd love to hear this too. They're wondering, what's the biggest surprise on migration? So, maybe Benjamin, I'll toss that to you first, and then everybody else can jump in. But I know you've got a lot of experience in the field, and I'd love to hear what tends to be a surprise.
I want to make one comment, and I'll let Benjamin jump on top of it. Don't do migration on Thanksgiving Day, because then you won't have Thanksgiving, which one of our customers did to Benjamin, and Benjamin and my team did not have a Thanksgiving weekend, just so you know. That's the only comment.
That's a good one. So
that's exactly There, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that one of the biggest surprises when you're talking to somebody about migrations and they don't think about what you can do with Veeam, they're going to be thinking about this mindset of an offline migration. So if you think about like a 5 terabyte server, and I think about an offline migration of a 5 terabyte server, that's even on a dedicated 10 gig network, that's roughly 70 minutes of constantly copying, and that's not even talking about the conversion and all this. And if you say, no, we can take that 5 terabyte server and potentially only have 15 minutes of downtime. Now, it's a busy 15 minutes that we're doing this, but then that just blows people's minds. What I don't understand. Our old SAN is only running at 2.5 gigabit or whatever. And you say, well, you don't understand. Veeam allows us with the orchestration tools to allow us to pre-populate all of this data to get it onto a repository. And that just blows people's minds because they're like, that's not possible. We don't have our old network on 100 gigabit, plus it's not even going that fast. And so that's probably the first surprise. The second surprise is when we put in like a DataON Azure Stack HCI of how fast it is. we will typically overrun the old SAN by a scale of 10 to 1. There was one scenario, I think we were overrunning it by like 25 to 1. And so everything came to a crawl when we were sending things over to the Azure Stack HCI. So we had to really throttle back some of those processes. I would say those are the two biggest surprises that you have with the customer and just experiencing that yourself.
One surprise I'll add is that a lot of people don't know that Veeam can do this with no additional cost. Okay, so there's no Veeam cost to move from one platform to another. And that is like, oh, I didn't know I could do that with Veeam. I mean, a lot of people only do, I'd say 99% of data recovery is whole system back to where it came from or file level recovery. Somewhere sideways over there, I have an infographic. There's over 100 ways to recover. And even Benjamin, who does this all the time, we learned Humpty Dumpty today. So there's just all these different little ways that you can put these different pieces of technology together to kind of solve a real problem. So I'd say that's the biggest surprise I would relay.
Gotcha. And Howard, did you, other than pulling out that great Thanksgiving example, did you want to add anything about the surprises that you guys see?
I think we've done enough with Benjamin that we tell the customer not everything could go smoothly. Make sure you plan ahead of time. Make sure you have someone that knows how to do it. You have a great technology from Veeam, but you got to know how to use it and plan out properly. I think that will minimize any surprises you get.
Gotcha. Excellent. Next question, Rick. I think you just touched on this, but I'll ask the question just in case. From Igor, how is Veeam licensing managed while migrating from one platform to another?
Well, I guess if I was going to bring two surprises, that would be the other one, is that to us, a server is a server, whether it's a VM on VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, or an instance in the cloud or a physical server. It's one, unit one. And so the thought is if it changes, it's still unit one with an asterisk that we only charge on the backup. So if we back it up in two different places, that means two backups. So you know, the one area of housekeeping, and this is surely an area that Benjamin and his colleagues know about, is to revoke licenses of the departed infrastructure, right? So the thought here is the universal license is flexible for this reason. And it was kind of born in the sense of, there's no sockets in the cloud. How many sockets does a NAS share? Things like that made the universal license make sense. But I'd say that there's no additional Veeam cost for different platforms. The only exception would be, not all platforms are equal. So keep that in mind too.
Excellent. Okay, thanks. Another question that we got here is they're wondering, what should I consider when evaluating if a change in hypervisors is the way to go? We've talked a lot about VMware, to Hyper-V. What are some of those considerations?
Well, one that I would highlight is, you got to have some visibility and some monitoring. Benjamin talked about, some throughput examples. I like to say Veeam 1 can monitor Hyper-V as well. And that's a big difference. A lot of people don't have that thought through. I mean, I would go through the operational consideration. I would go through the protection, so backup, and I would also go through the management of a new platform, and then also do some supportability drills and things like that. So I think that, troubleshooting on Azure Stack HCI is very different than VMware, and this is something you need to prepare for.
Okay. Excellent.
Well, I think from our perspective, I think it's important to understand, many people here are technologists. It's just another virtualization platform. Don't be, don't feel like it's something totally different. You still have to learn it, but as a technology like Hyper-V, it's been around, it's been proven. But more importantly, cost is a very important consideration. Remember, Hyper-V virtualization is part of a data center license. Every single enterprise today has a data center license. Essentially, you're getting Hyper-V free of cost, right? So these ROI analysis you do as you look at virtualization is important. and making sure that the right decision is made too.
Okay.
And just to build on what Howard said, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just to build on what Howard said, we've had people looking to migrate from one platform to Azure Stack HCI even 5 years ago, even before this huge price increase, just because they were paying a certain amount for their storage. They were paying a certain amount for their virtualization. And then they go to Azure Stack HCI. They have the software-defined storage included in that Microsoft licensing. They had their virtualization included in that Microsoft licensing. And because they had data center with SA, they already had that licensing. So bringing into, account all the costs is an important piece. And now, especially when somebody gets a renewal that's just out of the question, it is going to cause people to have a knee-jerk reaction. So my second thing is, don't just only look at just the budget, also look at support. If you go straight from a VMware to another platform that's open source that you have no idea where you're going to get support from, be very careful about that. Think about that. What I love about Azure Stack HCI and working with DataON is Microsoft's not going to be bought out anytime soon. That gives me a lot of comfort that I know, as the great Wayne Gretzky said, I know where the puck is going. I see where it is right now, but I know where it's going, and Microsoft's not going to get bought out, not anytime soon. So that helps me a lot in terms of support, knowing where my support's going to be, knowing what the budget is going to be, how much that's going to cost, which is, like Howard said, generally provided in the data center licenses that you already own.
That's an excellent point about Microsoft. What's their market cap? Something like $3 trillion?
A lot.
Maybe the Federal Reserve could buy them out, but I think that's about it. Yeah. All right. Well, gentlemen, I think that's probably where we're going to have to leave it based on time. But again, I just want to remind everybody, check out those resources in the handouts. And at this point, feel free to start that YouTube video that maybe you've been holding off on for additional details on some of the things that we've been talking about here. But Rick, Benjamin, Howard, thanks to all three of you guys for just a great presentation. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to let these guys get on with their busy days. And we have one last piece of business here, and that is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that card today is Mark Debenville from Colorado. So congratulations to Mark. We'll be in touch to get you your $250 Amazon gift card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Veeam for making this event possible. Again, I want to thank our speakers for a fantastic conversation. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.